Welcome back to the Mystery Garage. In today's episode, it's take 3. I'm taking the VR6 to the drag strip. Let's jump into it. Welcome back to the Mystery Garage. Now in last week's episode, if you caught it, we did a ton of talking about updates on the cars on the channel. And one of the things I said quite a few times is just how much more seat time I want in the VR6 drag car before the end of the season. And wouldn't you know it, time really flew by and our drag racing night came up. Now I'm actually talking to you from the future. I've been racing and back already. So the story kind of goes like this. Earlier in the week, I had a crazy busy week at work. I had purchased gauges throughout the week, getting ready to get to work on this car. I ended up getting caught up with work so much so that it was the day of the race that I had to throw in the gauges. And I thought, well, I've thrown in gauges many times before. Doesn't take very long. I'll just do it before we head out to the track. Not a big deal. And so I talked about in the last episode how having a RPM gauge, a boost gauge, as well as an air-fuel ratio gauge would really help get a better read on where this car is. While 13.9s last weekend was a pretty cool time to get for that particular day based on where we started, it definitely isn't anywhere close to where I thought this car could be. This car should be, kind of a mid-12s car in my opinion. It should be low 13s without a supercharger. So we really need to get this car dialed in. And it's not only the car, it's myself. I've had so much time off the drag strip. 15 to 20 years I haven't been back to the drag strip, so having only 4 passes, seeing that much of a difference was crucial. But there's so much more to go on this car. There's so much left in the car that I think we really can find. So because I only had a week from last racing to the racing that just happened, I thought it was time to throw some gauges in. So because I only had the morning of the day, I got to work pretty early and actually didn't film any of the work. One of the biggest things, which I'll show you in the car in just a second, I didn't really want to make it look cheesy, let's say. I didn't want to fill the dash with gauges or anything like that. And like I said, in the future, I would like to swap this dash to an earlier dash and sink some gauges into the earlier style round gauges as opposed to the later style dash in this car. But I got some gauges, so let me show you what's going on. So unfortunately, the place I picked up gauges, they didn't actually have the air-fuel ratio gauge. What we have right here is water temperature. That's all I had before, just stuck in this hole. And so what I ended up doing is putting an order on it for an air-fuel ratio gauge, but I did pick up a boost gauge, and I also picked up this backing plate for which I mounted the gauges. Now hopefully you guys can see that. I tried to keep it real clean. Somebody had before me in this car had really gutted this hole terribly, so I kind of cleaned it up as best I could. There is some more defects with this plastic that I wasn't too worried about hacking it up because it was already hacked up. So the fact that the corners aren't perfect, I'll refine that later in the future. But I thought these gauges fit pretty cool like that. For anybody who wants to know, these are 2-inch 1/16 is the size of the gauge, basically 2-inch gauges. And then I do want to throw in the air fuel ratio gauge here, which we have on order, which will be coming in the future. Last, I needed to find a place to put the tack. Now, unfortunately, because of the way this gauge setup is, it's a later style Mark 1 stuff. It's not easy to sink a round gauge in there. And I really don't like the Fast and Furious, late 90s spec look with the gauge kind of in this area. And all I really could find was a monster tack, which I was really looking for like a 3-inch, because a 3-inch would fit here probably pretty well, but a big 5-inch monster tack wasn't something I was really looking forward to. Yes, I could get this setup working, but I would have to change my cluster because you guys can see here, it's a clock cluster because this car used to be an automatic. So I would have to get a different cluster for this car. That is an option. I would have to get an adapter that goes from S&P sells it, for example, but an adapter that would work for your RPM gauge to hook up to your coil packs to get a readout here. And the speedometer I never had working, so I wasn't too worried about getting this set up because, again, like I said before, I want to change to an earlier dash with the round gauges that are inset in it, so I wasn't too worried about it. So I did go pick up a monster tack. As much as I don't like the look, I wanted to hang it in a place that didn't look super cheesy, so I chose right there. So this is pretty much hidden for the most part. So looking from the outside of the car, you actually can't tell that there's a gauge hung up there. Even from the front of the car, it is pretty hidden in just the sight line. Even with the sticker there, it covers it up. The sticker was there beforehand, but you get the idea. It's not really that noticeable, even from this side. Unless you know it's there, you wouldn't really be looking for it. And for me, you know, that's enough. I'm not a big fan of the cheesy look of a huge gauge right on the corner of the dash. Did I need to have an RPM gauge, you know, that big or like that? No, I didn't. Like I said before, I could have easily just swapped out the cluster, but because I'm going to be swapping out the dash anyways, I just thought this was the route to go for now. So one of the other things I do really like about this setup is you get full window view. I don't have anything covering anything up. It's actually aimed at me perfectly up here from where I'm sitting. Sorry guys, I'm trying to hold the, the camera between me and the gauge, as well as sitting pretty close to it, so I apologize about that. But it stays out of the view of me driving, so I get full view of the strip, of the trees. And like I said before, this car is a street-driven car as well, so being able to drive it normally on the street without having that in the way of the view is great too. Plus, it's kind of in your face. When the shift light lights up, it's boom right here. So back to the part of the story of why I ended up being a little bit behind in today's filming is because I ended up getting to work on the car, and I didn't realize when I had purchased the tack, I had got the boost gauge working, everything was great. I threw on the tack, went to go wire it up, and for some reason when I bought the gauge, I wasn't thinking that this is a coil pack car now, not a distributor car. That back in the day, you used to have to send these tacks out to Autometer to condition them to be able to take a tack signal, a distributor signal. And later in their technology, they still kept the tack the same, but they ended up selling what you get is like an adapter that creates a signal. So I didn't have that adapter. It was like 2 hours before I needed to be at the racetrack. And one of the biggest changes for the night was to have this tack operating. I was super bummed. I thought I wasn't going to end up going. So I kind of just drove out to the parts store thinking I was kind of giving up on the night to make it to the racetrack. Ended up getting it pretty quick, coming back and hooking it up like 10 minutes before the track opened. I'm about 45 minutes away from the track, so I actually got it working. I was super stoked on it, so I quickly grabbed the kids and the wife. We loaded up in the truck, I slammed the race car into the trailer, and away we went. So I actually didn't have any time to preemptively start the episode, talk about what we were doing. I just made it to the track, and I was in such a rush when I got there because we got there like an hour and a half after the track had opened for the night. I basically pushed the car out of the trailer, went to teched really quickly. I already had missed a couple passes, I think 1 or 2 of the Sport Compact class. So I was just excited just to get the car out there to see how much the gauges changed for me. And we went out and made this pass right here. Now, the best thing about that pass was actually a couple things. Right out of the gate, I ran a 13.26, which was the fastest pass I've ever made in this car. And there was actually absolutely zero changes since I made the last car's pass other than adding gauges. So it goes to show you just how much movement there is in the quality of the driver. I have a lot more to still do, even as a driver, to improve. So there's no question, the way this car is set up currently, that I couldn't get into the high 12s by just fine-tuning, finding the right tire pressures, finding the right launch RPM to really grip up in the 60 foot, as well as figure out how to get most mile an hour. I'm still shifting too early, so that's something that can definitely be improved. And sorry, the funny thing is, I was so rushed to get to the racetrack, I didn't even get out on the street to be able to test the tack. And while the tack works while driving under a high load, you can actually see in the video, if you wanted to rewind it back, but you'll see in the next pass that my tack actually works until I'm at about 4,000, 5,000 RPM, and then it just falls off and it just shuts down. So I think that's actually a grounding issue, but I didn't bring any of my wiring gear with me because, again, I was in such a rush to get to the track. I quickly threw everything in the trailer and went out there, so I didn't really have a whole lot of stuff with me to do wiring changes to the tack. So also, I obviously met some friends there. I was able to run with Greg the very first time. His car is wicked. It's also wicked fast. It was pretty cool to line up with a friend and get out there and do a hard rip. So I was super pumped. The car had made some improvements, or actually I had, and I was looking for making some more improvements. So once we kind of stopped or did the first run, took a look at the car, I actually found a boost leak that I had. So I went and fixed up that, and we went and made the second run. Thank you. Sorry. All five, baby. Ripped it. Or is that him? That's him. Oh, 13.3. Oh, dang. It was pretty funny. I got a laugh out of it. Even watching the video. I don't know how many of you guys have done that. You've run a rip at the drag strip and you grab the time slip and you're looking at the wrong lane. I did exactly that, and I got caught off because I had beat the GTR on the drag strip, but I had forgotten that the time doesn't start ticking on these street legal nights until you leave the tree. So he must have just had a terrible reaction time, and I had obviously flew down the track faster than he did. So I thought I won, so I was looking for the quicker time. I mistakenly read the wrong lane, even though he beat me by almost a second. So, well done to him, but I was super pumped and I actually read the wrong time. But nevertheless, it was almost a carbon copy. I ran a 13.3. So it was basically exactly almost the run I ran before. So I was starting to get consistent with the car a little bit, but again, short shifting too early. Not able to read the RPM for the tack because remember the tack was limited to a certain RPM and that would shut down. So I wasn't able to be consistent on my launch RPM. So I do need to fix this, and I have actually hopefully done it since we've gotten back, because the very first thing when I rolled the car out of the trailer, I'm like, I gotta fix that tack. So I've made some adjustments. I do need to take it for a test rip to see if that works. I'll show you quickly what I mean by not having the tack grounded correctly. So the tack needs a signal. Generally when you have a distributor car, you just get the signal off of the distributor. And in this case, running multiple coils or having the single VR6 coil pack, what you don't have is a signal. Now you can, in the, I believe it's OBD1, get a signal from the ECU on the green and black wire. I tried that before I ended up figuring it out, and even talking to tech support from Autometer, that I needed this adapter. So I ran this adapter. Now what it does do is it interrupts the signal going to these coils and basically makes a tack signal from it. Now what I think I did incorrectly was found an impact proper ground to run this signal pack. So what happens is when the signal pack wasn't getting the proper ground at higher RPM, it was giving a weird signal, and the RPM gauge didn't know how to read it, and it shut it down. So I think what the issue is here again is the grounding for this adapter. I think I've rectified it, but nevertheless, again, had a semi-decent run, definitely better than last week. So took a look at a couple more things and went out again for the third and final pass of the night. Now I got to run with Greg again. That was an awesome night. You know, we had such a good time, but I had to call it quits because I brought the kids and the wife, and like I had said, I didn't really give them much time to get ready because I asked them just to hop in the truck and let's go. So they were getting a little tired and it was time for everybody to go, so we had to call it a night there. Unfortunately, it was the slowest pass of the night, was the last pass. I was a little bit rattled at the tree. You know, I wasn't at the proper RPM that I launched, and you know, against Greg, the guy's a fast car, I was a little bit intimidated, and it gets you excited, and I wasn't doing the right things when I left the tree. So getting this tack to work properly will be huge. Now I guarantee you, next time that we go out, I will work my hardest to find even more time in this car. I hope to get into the high 12s. Might do a little bit of motor mods before we head out there next time, but I don't want to promise you anything. We're definitely going to get these gauges working and get everything sorted out. I hope you guys liked this episode. You know, it was really quick. It was last minute. Everything was super fast, but I had a great time hanging out with the boys at the racetrack. We had a lot of laughs, a great time. I'm really starting to fall for this racing thing, like I told you guys. All day, every day, all I think about is what can I do to improve things, and there's lots more on the table before we abandon this supercharger. I want to get this car into some really quick times. We probably will go standalone before that time. Even with this setup, we might go to the 42-pound setup. There's a lot of other changes we can do to this program, and I'm really looking forward to all that. So thanks for watching. Really do appreciate it. If you really like this content, I highly recommend that you guys subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for everything. Until next time, take care.